content and not our ugly faces. So, anyways, guys, let me just start out by saying thank you so much for being here. As always, we really appreciate you. We are at 26,000 of you now out there. I can't believe it. I am absolutely blessed. I started in this journey probably about 8, 9 years ago with this guy that you see on the screen, Trevor Current. And we started out the Digital Photography Cafe show, and we traveled the country covering photography, videography, all types of shows from Las Vegas all the way to New York and everywhere in between. So we had a lot of fun doing that. We did hundreds and hundreds of shows. You can go back and take a look in the archive for the Digital Photography Cafe here on YouTube, and you'll be able to check those out. So there's a lot of good evergreen content that you'll probably be able to see there. Anyways, this is Trevor. Just wanted to say hello to you. Just tell everyone a little bit about you. Most of the people here probably know my nonsense by now, but let them know about you.
Yeah, sure. So as Joe said, we started the Digital Photography Cafe show back in 2011, I think it was. And so my background, I am a professionally trained designer and photographer. That's what I went to school for and graduated with a degree in. I've been in the design field now for just about 30 years. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah, 30 years. So
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I've always, so graphic design has always been my primary focus, and I've always enjoyed photography as a hobby, but I also would incorporate it into my daily work. So a lot of our clients would need like quick shots for, comps or things like that. So I would do those in-house. And as digital photography, as the technology advanced, we started bringing more of that photography in-house. So I was doing it more on a regular basis, doing product photography, and that was being used on consumer packaging or collateral, point of purchase displays, all kinds of stuff. So photography in general has always been a passion of mine, and that's why I've always kind of been following the journey of digital and where it's been going, and kind of talking about it for so long.
Yeah, that's why I think that's how we got together way back in the day. I think it was through, what was it? Where did we find each other first? Was it on Twitter? I think it might have been on Twitter. It was a
Yep.
long, but like 10 years ago or so. But anyway, so we've been doing this, like Trevor said, for quite some time. He's been doing it forever. We've both been doing this forever. So we're just going to give a little bit of our take on it. I'm just honored to have you on the show because we haven't been doing anything together for so long. It's so good to get back and be able to have this back and forth. And I know a lot of our people that used to watch the Digital Photography Cafe, they used to like the show, not because of you or me, but that interaction that we had, because we are basically guys polar opposite. All right. He would be black and I would be white. It doesn't really matter what the topic is. So I think we have
Yep.
a little bit of similarities when it comes to this topic, but anyways, let's kind of get into it. Now, this entire thing kind of blew up with Adobe. They're doing this thing whereas they are claiming that an executive order that was put out is the reason why they're going to be shutting down all cloud service, all software basically, to Venezuela. Now, I did a video a couple of days ago about it, and we talked about it a little bit, guys. And a lot of you were saying, I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand what is going on here because when I read through it, I don't see anything explicitly saying that Adobe should not be doing this. And I know you read through it also, and we were looking at it,
Right.
and it just doesn't make sense. I was looking at some of the little key features here, and a lot of the things go back to suspending any type of, obviously we have sanctions going on, okay, but it's about blocking and sanctioning the government and not the people. So when I read through this, a lot of it will state things like persons to be determined, or companies to be determined by the Secretary of Treasury, or in consultation
Right.
with the Secretary of State, and are you on this naughty list or not? And I just don't see that being the case. Now, that being said, yes, you could maybe take it in a way that, yes, all transactions are going to need to, let's say, stop, halt because of these sanctions. But I just don't see that being the case, especially not in this document. Now, one of the things that I saw in here, they were saying, and they specifically said, they said material assets sponsored or provided financial, material, or technological support for, or goods or services, or in support in or of any person, including on the list of. Now, that's that list that we're saying, the naughty list, right? Specially designated nationals and blocked persons maintained by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, yada, yada, yada. So once again, I'm seeing this as a person's or a company that's being blocked, not a carte blanche, across the entire country saying we are going after the people. I just don't see it as that being the case. And I do think that Adobe is a little bit far reaching here. Now, I want to, before we get into it a little bit more, I want to say that if this was the case, in my personal opinion, we would see companies like Microsoft. They're massive. They have lawyers that are as big, bigger. They know what's going on when it comes to this this executive order. All right. They understand it inside and out better than we do. All right. But we would see stuff like Microsoft 365 that has like Outlook and Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Access. And then, of course, all of their included services, right? Which would be like
Right.
Exchange and on OneDrive. The OneDrive, as well as SharePoint and Teams. We don't see that. Now, we know OneDrive is massive for a lot of companies. They use that for storing their data. Now, if Microsoft did the exact same and shut down 365 over there, now what do people have? As it is, a lot of these folks are losing their projects at the end of this month.
Right.
So I don't know. What is your take
Right.
on it, Trevor?
Well, I mean, when you read the executive order, it's so much legally that you kind of have to sift through. Sift through the confusing wording and stuff that only lawyers understand. But I think when you get down to the meat of it, it's the president of the United States and our government is saying we're not going to do business with the Venezuelan government. And
Right.
anybody that in the United States that does business out of country can no longer do it with Venezuela. And they're trying to put the screws to them to help counteract and combat some of the crazy stuff that's going on down there. So reading through the text, it does not imply that everyone in Venezuela needs to be blocked from Creative Cloud. It seems like it's only the people connected with the government and the regimes and stuff like that. So why are they just blocking the entire country? And honestly, I think it's just because it's easier. I would be curious to know how many people from Venezuela actually have, legitimate paid Creative Cloud subscriptions, whether
Right.
they be month to month or yearly.
Right.
And looking at the fine that Adobe could be assessed if they are continuing to transact business outside, in Venezuela, and these government people, these regimes are getting software, creating their propaganda material or whatever they're doing, that Adobe could be heavily fined. So I think it's just easier for them to say, you know what, we'll take the cash loss. It's not that many people, let's say, and we'll just block it for everybody.
I have to say that a couple of people wrote into comments from the last video, and they were talking about how in their country they have to pirate like a lot of the
Yeah.
software, Adobe especially, because they
Yeah.
can't get it. And I found that odd, and I was like, really, is that the case? And I was looking into it a little bit more, and I was reading more and more people saying the exact same thing. A lot of people in these countries are pirating the software anyways. And what's really aggravating, is the point that the ones that are doing it right, guys, the ones that are actually purchasing the license and doing it right, paying monthly, paying yearly, whatever, they're the ones that are getting screwed. And the ones that are
Yeah.
pirating the software are sitting back like, you see, that's why we're pirating the software. I mean, it's just,
Right. Right.
it just doesn't sit well with me. It really doesn't. Now, I mean, I look at it too as, imagine if they, once they shut all this down and the cloud is gone, how many projects are going to be gone, that aren't taken off in that period of time? I believe they're going to go dead, I think, right around the end of the month or something. I don't know if it's right away or if they're going to slowly roll out that or what they're doing, but everything, I believe, by the end of the month is going to be gone. But at that point,
Right.
what do you do? Let's say you're a news agency and you are, not affiliated, let's say, affiliated with the regime, the whole Nicholas Maduro regime, and you're trying to go against me. You're trying to put out your political, propaganda to try to get things the way you want it, let's say. And now you're stifled too, because all of that work is gone. You can't find, you can't do
Right.
anything with it. So there's a lot of things that are going on. And the main thing that really bothers me is that they are almost asking for their software to be pirated by all of these countries, not just Venezuela. I mean, I was just talking to
Right.
someone in Iran, same thing. They pirated all of it. It's always being pirated. That's just the way it is. They're like, I wish I can actually buy it, but I can't. It's just really kind of odd and interesting at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And AJ said in the comments here, or excuse me, William said in the comments, how would you police it? You know,
It's a
and
good
that's
point.
exactly right. I mean, it would be really, I mean, almost impossible to identify individuals and what their roles are, what their need for the software is, to say, okay, you can use it, but you can't. It would be almost impossible. Now, little conspiracy theory, months back, we heard rumors and saw press releases and things that Adobe was being sued because of their partnership with Dolby
Dolby
Digital,
Digital. Yep.
and some other some of the software was being used in their previous versions of their apps, and they were forcing people to not use those apps and to upgrade and blah blah blah. It was a whole big thing, and basically Dolby said, Adobe, we want to know how many people
Right.
are using those older versions of the software
How many
with our
licenses?
software in
Yeah.
it.
How many licenses basically are out there? And they're
Correct.
like, and they're
And
like,
Adobe,
oh, we don't know.
yeah, yeah, Adobe's like, oh, we don't know. We they weren't providing that information. Well, that Adobe knows. I mean, they can track everything. So
Yeah.
if they open that can of worms, if they have the ability to track and know who's who and what's what, now that really opens them back up to the lawsuits, because then Dolby and whoever else can come back to them and say, listen, you're turning off the software for certain people in Venezuela because they're affiliated with the government or the regimes, but other people are not. How are you distinguishing them?
Right.
And if you have the data to back that, to prove it, then you certainly have the data to know who's got what installed, and we want that list.
Right.
And now the dollars start adding up.
Yeah, and like AJ Booster, he basically is saying that the people suffer. Of course, that's usually, and that's almost always how it goes. Whenever you're talking about sanctions,
Yep.
there's always
Yep.
people that are going to end up suffering, even though the sanctions are explicitly in this document directed towards the government of Venezuela, as well as the regime of this Nicholas Maduro. And I believe they also state in there, if I can find it in here, a specific bank or whatnot. They're directing it towards certain entities, okay, and then they're blanketing that by saying, if you are associated with today or in the past or in the future, you need to let us know what's going on. And then if we give you authorization to do business, then you can. If not, then you can't. Obviously, that's the whole idea of sanctions. But once again, in this document, I don't see anywhere that Adobe can possibly dream this up and say, you know what, I'm going to shut down everything. It's almost like they wanted to do this anyways, and this was just a reason to do it, so to speak.
Right.
Is
Right.
that the case? I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of smarter people out there that are, here listening, and in the comment area, as I always say, put your thoughts, put those comments down there. Also, when you guys get a chance, don't forget to head over to this community.jcristina.com. I'll put it up here on the screen. You can see it, community.jcristina.com. That is a Discord server that I've created for all of you guys that are creatives out there. Join that, and we'll be able to have these conversations in a little bit more detail. And it is fully archived, which is great, and searchable. So definitely go check that out, community.jcristina.com. Let's see, who else do we got here in the chat? You see a couple other ones that pop up, Trevor?
Yeah. Yeah. Glenn had commented, the European Union needs to sue Adobe because of violation of GDPR rules.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, GDPR is a huge issue.
massive.
My company, my day job, our primary business now is developing websites. And because websites are worldwide viewable, we have to make sure that, our corporate clients comply with GDPR,
Yep.
at least in a basic sense, at least to alert the visitor that, hey, we use cookies, blah, 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 read our policy, click to agree,
Right.
and
Right.
that's kind of the basics that gives them the basic cover. But yeah, depending on what information Adobe is collecting, I mean, because really, we know the software is phoning home. It has to. That's how it checks the license validity. So, and if your license expires, your software basically immediately stops working. So they know that every time you launch the software at set intervals or whatever, it's calling home. So they
Right.
know a lot of what's going on. Just think of the data they could pull
Absolutely.
from your computer,
Yeah.
your Mac ID, your IP address, all this different stuff.
Yeah, you see Rosby in here, he says, "Good thing I cut the cord," which is something that we were talking about. Also, we have Glenn saying, "Yeah, Adobe is doomed to death by marketing." Um, what else we have? William, he says, "Aren't most photographers moving to Capture One?" Adobe's basically, their market is kind of shrinking. Well, I started out the Life After Adobe cutting the cord series back a few months ago for this reason. I cut the cord from Adobe because, not that I didn't think that their software wasn't great, because I do think that it is great. Do I
Yeah.
think that it is great as it should be for the amount of money that they're receiving, the billions? No, I don't. That being said, the software is really good, but I just didn't feel that I could continue to give a company that I don't agree with their trade practices, I don't agree with what they do, money every month continuously, and renting software and never owning the software. Hence, that if at any time they want to shut down CC, or shut me down, or shut down whatever they want to shut down, I have nothing to use. All right. My software disappears immediately. And I did a video on that where I cut the cord completely and I went into Lightroom, literally 15 seconds. And that goes back to what you're saying, how they're continuously phoning home, Trevor. 15
Right.
seconds, went in there and it says, "Sorry, if you want to go into Lightroom, you can. Just head over and renew your membership." Okay. So what that means is
Right.
once you cut the cord, that is it. Your projects, the stuff that
Yeah,
you're
you're
doing
done.
is finished. Now, I went and found a lot of different software that I tested, and I made this whole playlist. If you guys haven't seen it, go into this channel, find the playlist, Life After Adobe, Cutting the Cord. I've taken care of Photoshop, all right, some alternatives for Photoshop. I've also done Illustrator, and I've done Lightroom. I'm currently working on Premiere for video and NLE, right? So I've been
Right.
doing this, and what I've found in doing it is that some programs allow you to use Adobe files even though they're in their separate program, whatever it is. A perfect example was Affinity. I started using Affinity Designer, and I was able to load in some of my Illustrator files, the AI files, and with probably about a 99% success rate. That is awesome. But conversely, Premiere, anything that I've created in Premiere, I cannot load in any of those projects into, for example, DaVinci or into whatever it is, Sony. So, or what is it, Vegas now? You just can't
Right.
do it. All right. Those
Yep.
projects are history. And that's what you got to think about if you are going to be one of those people that are going to be cutting the cord. You have to look at those projects. What are going to be transferable? What are not? What can you lose? What can you not? And it goes back into that renting software. You never own it. All right. And if at any time you
Yep.
stop paying, your credit card your credit card goes bad or whatever the case might be, that's the end of it. You do not have access. You could be in the middle of doing something and now you can't finish it. How many people that are going to be in Venezuela when they do not have Creative Cloud, that they're using Premiere, for example, to do production? Maybe they're halfway through a movie edit, and
Right.
now all of a sudden, that's it. It's not like they can go into DaVinci or into something else and finish the movie because their entire project is in Premiere Pro. So it's a big issue, and a lot of you guys I've got hundreds of thousands of views on these things, and just tens of thousands of comments from you guys that are doing the exact same thing, cutting the cord and giving a ton of reasons why you're doing it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I know you're in the midst
Yeah.
of
I
doing
mean,
it yourself, and you are having more of an issue than a lot of other people because you, like some that have to do with creating, let's say, projects that have to be, let's say, used by not only yourself but other agencies. You have to be on the same, let's say, with using the same program as they do, and that is a problem too.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that really is the problem. I mean, the obviously everyone that's in the chat right now, everyone that watches your YouTube channel, they're in the know. They're informed. They know what's going on. You're reporting on the news. They're obviously following along online. They're reading about what's going on. They're informed about what Adobe is doing, the business practices, and the way things are changing. Most people are not. Most people that use the software honestly are not paying attention to Adobe as a company. They just want to know that their software is working, and if it's not, who do they have to contact to reactivate the license or get a payment done? So most people are not paying attention. So they're going through life with the blinders on and just continually using the Adobe products. And yes, that is a problem for our company because we work with other agencies. We work with marketing groups that do a lot of in-house stuff that use Adobe software, and when they send us a file, we need to be able to open it. We need to be able to edit it. We may need to send a file off to a printer, who's using the Adobe product. So, I know today, print is different today than it was years ago, but there is still a need to send out native Illustrator files, let's say, to a printer because they want to be able to go in there and do their magic to make it all perfect for printing. A lot of printers today just work from PDFs. They can do so much pre-flight with the PDF files that they don't need to go into Illustrator. So it's not really an issue. If you can produce your PDF, you can go.
Yeah.
But, most of the work we do today is web-based work. So we need to get files in. We need to be able to open them and make JPEGs or GIFs or PNGs or SVGs or whatever we need. So Affinity and other software programs can read Illustrator files and give us the ability to work with those files, even if we can't, export them back as a native AI file and send them back for compatibility. So, I'm really starting to reevaluate things myself because it's not a matter of the money that, for us in the business that we do, it's just the cost of doing it. I'm not sweating the 50 something dollars a month for a single license and, with a couple machines or whatever, multiply that out. But what I'm concerned about is the business practice. And, will Adobe make a change that doesn't work for our business in the future? Also, it's the need. Do we need all of the Adobe products?
You know
You
what,
know, and
Trevor? I have to say one thing that I just saw, and I wanted to bring it up real quick, not to interrupt, but someone was saying how that most of the banks and institutions that are over there in Venezuela are currently using Adobe Acrobat to create all of their documents, all of everything,
sure.
which I thought was just unbelievably. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Like, all of a sudden, you cannot print your doc. I mean, no one can print the documents because they're all using Adobe, Acrobat. Let's say, the
Yeah.
banks and the this and that. I was like, wow, that is something that I didn't even think about. But this is what happens when you get fully immersed in a specific brand, a specific company, all right, and throw all of your creative
Yep.
eggs, like I said in the last video, into one basket. You never know what's going to happen. A lot of people are throwing all of their data in the cloud, and God forbid the cloud rains, they lost everything, and now what? Some people don't understand how important it is to keep your data, keep those backups. Let me see here. I think it's Dole Wolfen, I believe, photography. He says you should always back up locally your files in the chat window. And that is
Yeah.
100% the case. You do. Matter of fact, that's exactly what I'm working on right now. And I'm going to bring it to you guys in the next couple of weeks. I'm working on this massive 40 terabyte just server, all right, that's going to be an Unraid server for doing just that here locally so that we can have those backups and be able to do them efficiently here and then move a secondary copy off site. But absolutely, to trust the cloud today is just not smart, simply not smart. A lot of people do it. I mean, how many people were using Google products, for example, that the Google product has disappeared? They are no longer, it's not out there
Oh
anymore.
yeah.
That's so evident. I have to say, 65 drums, thank you so much. Really appreciate that donation over there in that super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't have to do that, but I do appreciate it for sure. So, but yeah, it's a major problem. And it's like, well, there's too many people that are just relying today on the cloud and thinking that everything is just going to simply be okay, number one. And number two, they're still renting their software and they don't understand that at any given time, that software can be gone and now they cannot make money. A lot of people are making
Yeah.
money with the software. Now, what do you do? What is it that you can do?
Yeah, but there are so many companies going the subscription route because they see what Adobe have done. They look at other subscription models for business. Website hosting. I mean, we work on a subscription model with our clients. They pay a monthly fee to us like every other hosting company out there, and we provide them a service. The Microsoft 360, I mean, they're the subscription model now. All these, so many companies are going subscription. So you could potentially run into the same thing. As far as cloud goes, you're putting your eggs in other people's basket with the cloud. Like it's been said in the chat, you want to have your primary copy in your office. You want to have a backup in your office. You want to have a backup locally, but off site, so that you can physically get to. And sure, do a cloud backup, do cloud storage. Why not? I mean, I have Amazon Prime, and with that, you get the unlimited photo storage. So I have all my kids' photos from the time they were babies and stuff. I mean, I want to get them all organized and everything locally, but I want to put them all up there just so they're there.
Right.
I foresee myself having Amazon Prime up into the future. Now, when I end my Prime subscription someday, what will happen to those photos? Well, they may all
Right.
go away, but I've got them locally. And then I'll just keep migrating that data to whatever the next storage solution is. But yeah, I never ever stored anything in the Adobe Cloud. I never used any of their storage. It was all software running locally on the machine, files being saved locally on the machine. I never had a need nor. Um, but this is a problem for people that have been doing that. And I think that's just a workflow issue that they need to rethink, and come up with a new method in light of the situation. Because everybody's saying in the chat, and everybody's absolutely right. At any point in time, a software company could flip that kill switch, any software, not just Adobe, because that a lot of the software running probably has some code in the background that allows them to disable it remotely because everything checks, calls home to check license,
No, absolutely. No,
you know.
absolutely. I mean,
So at any point in time,
we have Jim Graves here that says the executive order they quote as a reason for cutting their service to Venezuela is purely down to the U.S. government detesting the government of Venezuela. And then we have William following up with that and we detest all dictatorships taking over a free people. And, so there's a lot of that polarity when it comes to this topic. And that's the one thing that I want to make sure that all are aware of. I'm not here making a decision saying that what the government here in the US is doing is right or wrong. I'm not into that. I'm not a political guy, okay?
right,
The only thing
right,
that
right,
I'm
right,
looking at is the order that was issued that Adobe is using for fodder for actually doing what they're doing to Venezuela, to the people, not just the government, okay,
right,
and the regime. I feel is a little bit overstepping, heavy-handed, in my personal opinion. And I cite that Microsoft has not done it yet. Now, I really believe that Microsoft attorneys would have done the exact same thing with their Microsoft 365 and cut that off to the country of Venezuela if they find that to be a problem. So I don't know, I just don't see it. I really don't see it. But like I said, there is that push and pull, there is that polarity, and there is this political nature behind it. But I just want everyone to focus on the point of Adobe in general. What do they do? Now we've seen them, like you've spoke about, with Dolby Digital, the exact same thing, where they were saying, sorry, we can't see how many licenses we currently out there, but God forbid, someone is doing something negatively to Adobe. They're like, well, you need to make sure you give us all of the information. When to Dolby Digital, like, we don't have any information. They don't play, in my personal opinion, fairly. And that's one of the reasons why I don't use them currently anymore. Like I said, is the software good? It is. But still, I will
yeah,
not give them the money. Now, as far as rental stuff and owning things, yes, a lot of things are starting to go rental. I don't like it, but it is the case. We just have to be
it's just the
leery
way it
with
is.
it. You just have to be thoughtful and say, listen, I'm renting this right now. What's going to happen if that rental goes away? Am I still okay? You need to have a plan B. And a lot of people do not have plan Bs today. They go with that plan A and they stick with plan A, ad nauseum, indefinitely, forever. And they just don't, what's going to happen once something goes south? So, do we own anything, even when you purchase it? Kind of no. All right. There
Right,
is
right.
the TOS in there, terms of service, that will state that you own basically nothing. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Now, a couple of people in the commentary of one of my past videos said, you know what, Joe, listen to this. I purchased Adobe software, and I believe he was saying it was Photoshop or one of them, or Creative Suite, something, and it was an expensive piece. So either it was a couple $100, $300, $400 for the Photoshop way back, I think Photoshop 6, or it was the full suite that was like $1,300. But what he said, it was version 6 that he owned. He owned it, but they discontinued it. They shut it down. Now, when he tried to install it, it says, sorry, you can't install it. You need to upgrade to CC. He was on the
Yep.
phone with Adobe for hours and hours and hours. I forgot exactly how many, probably like 2, 3 hours. And he finally got them to issue him some special allowance, some special
Yeah.
nonsense to be able to install the software that he actually purchased. And he has literally a retail box in his hand. It doesn't matter. If they want to shut it down, they can shut it down, even the item that you purchased. Because what happens is it's constantly phoning home. They'll say that it's phoning home because they want to make sure you're up to date. All right. But every
Yep.
time it phones home, it checks to see if you're authorized to use that software, even if you purchased it. So major, major, major issue. Major issue. And this is a
Yeah.
perfect
That
example
happened.
of what happens.
That happened to me years ago, I think with CS2.
Wow, that
Um,
is a bit ago.
so yeah, so we had it installed on we had several licenses and we had it installed on multiple machines in the office, and one of the machines needed a rebuild, and it crapped out or whatever, and I had to do a complete rebuild from like the startup disk. And the one thing that I neglected to do was log into one of the Adobe apps and deactivate the license before I wiped the machine.
Uh-huh.
So when I rebuilt the machine, I put the same software back on it, and it was saying you can't activate them. You don't have any more licenses available. So I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the same license that was on the machine. And I had to get a hold of Adobe and tell them, why can't I activate it? And they're saying, well, it's showing that it's already activated on a machine. And I said, no, it's the same machine. I just rebuilt the machine. And they like started bitch slapping me about it, saying that, well, you can't do that. You need to be more aware of what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, all right, shut up
Yeah.
and just activate my license.
Right. I mean,
Don't
I
give me a
bought it.
hard
I
time.
own
Things
it,
happen.
right? But that goes back
Yeah,
to the
I've
idea
got the
that,
box.
yeah. And that's, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, guys, I have owned Adobe Creative Suite, at $1,300, $1,500 every year for countless years. I probably have 10K in Adobe suites and
Oh,
software over the
I
time,
know.
at
It's
least, probably
crazy.
more. But regardless, all that software is basically useless because once I did shut off that CC, that was the end of it. Everything was gone. All right,
Yep.
nothing works anymore. Now, yes, could I go get an old, version 5, version 5.5 or 6 or something and get it installed? Yeah, if I want to sit there for 3, 4 hours with, some representative from Adobe in Dubai, India, yeah, that's a possibility, which I don't want to do, nor do I have the time to do it. Okay. But the bottom line is I am not going to give them any more money because I don't care for their trade practice. I don't care what they do to the people. That is the people of other
Yeah.
countries. That's the people here. Someone brought up the UK. Is the UK next? What is going on there? There's a lot of countries now that are probably going to look at Venezuela and say, can this happen to us? Can we be just shut down and that's the end of it? I think we're going to start seeing a lot more people moving from Adobe to alternatives because there are alternatives out there. Whereas
Yeah.
years ago, there really wasn't that great alternatives. Okay. And the ones that were out there they just, they weren't good enough, let's just say, for professional or prime time use. Well, today there
Yeah.
are a lot of people are using Capture One, they're using On One, they're using Alien Skin software, they're using just a ton of different things. There's a lot of people now using Linux. I'm a Linux guy from way back. I was using Unix before, Apple even started
Yeah.
OS X that's using BSDI for their back end. Some people don't even know when they're using a Mac, they're actually using Unix. They're using Linux, all right? But that's a whole nother thing. But we see a lot of people now using Darktable and they're using Raw Therapy and a lot of other pieces of software that are free. The whole FOSS thing, FOSS, right? That whole idea of
Right.
free. So, it is something that we now have the ability to decide and say, we're going to go with Adobe or we're not. And I think a lot of people now are not going with Adobe and they're looking for these alternatives where they can actually spend the money and buy it. Now, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher, they're doing amazing, amazing. They have brought in, they've made like a cottage industry for themselves going against Adobe. And they're doing it right, guys. They're doing it right.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the two products that I picked, one for design, one for Illustrator, and the other one for Photoshop, were both Affinity products. Now, I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get a dime for them, but I'm just telling you guys what worked the best out of the 10, 15 pieces of software that I use. So definitely check out those videos that I did make about life after Adobe cutting the cord. That whole playlist goes through a lot of those. And like I said, I will be going into the NLE of Adobe Premiere Pro very, very soon. So that's going to be the next thing. One of the top ones that I'm looking at right now is DaVinci Resolve. And matter of fact, a lot of my videos I've been doing lately edited with DaVinci Resolve. Why? It's free. Does it matter that it's free? No, because I can buy it for, 299 bucks or whatever if I want to, but it is free, but it works really, really well. Once again, there is software out there that is as good and sometimes better than
Sure.
Adobe software. Why is it better, guys? Because like I said from the very beginning, when we had this conversation, when they started this whole entire rent or lease to never own service, okay? I said as soon as they do that and they get that taste for that money every single month, they get paid and they get paid over and over and over, okay? They no longer have to create innovation, right? It's always this iteration
Right.
now. They just slowly make little iterative things. They don't innovate. They don't have to make a new version 9 that looks awesome that everyone wants to buy. No, they don't have to do it anymore. You're going to pay no matter
Right.
what. So that is a big difference. Whereas other companies, like for example, DaVinci or with Affinity, they have to make the next best thing continuously. All right. So it makes you want to upgrade or buy it straight away. So Adobe doesn't have this. They have the luxury of just sitting on their laurels and doing nothing and continuously getting richer and richer. That's it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Every other software company is vying for second place. Adobe, like it or not, is still first place in every one of the software categories, for creative software. So, everybody else is trying to get second and third place. So they need to innovate. They need to come up with great pricing structures.
Absolutely.
They need to have the features that are comparable to the Adobe version or better. But, as business in general changes, because again, I'm more in the website development space now, and I'm looking at it from another perspective, an additional perspective from the graphic design standpoint and the photography standpoint. And business has changed. The need to have to use Adobe is no longer there. We have choice, we have good choice. And Adobe absolutely has been feeling it for sure. Their subscriptions have been dropped. People have been switching. There is no doubt that they're feeling it, but because of the business model, they can weather the storm. It's much cheaper for them to run a subscription-based, cloud-based software platform as opposed to printing boxes and booklets and discs and mailing them out and getting them in, distributorships and all of that. There's so much overhead that was with that stuff. They've cut all that overhead, so they have a lot more runway to weather the churn. And school system, even my local high school, I was talking to the teacher the one day and she's talking about, how they use Adobe products and blah, blah, blah. And they're using CS6. They're not even on Creative Cloud because they can't afford, it's not in the budget for the educational subscription.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, why are you using Adobe? Maybe you should consider a different platform. And she's like, different software. Like, well, like what? Again, back to the blinders that I was saying. So many people are not aware of what's happening within the industry, and they just think and assume that Adobe is the end all and be all because that's what they've told.
Right.
But it really is not. For those of us that are more on the cutting edge of technology and what's happening in the space, we know about the alternative. So, the videos that you're producing, the organic growth that they're getting, the people that are discovering, at this Adobe series and learning that there's other options out there, they're getting educated. And then all of a sudden, those people are going to start maybe switching and maybe realizing that, Photoshop anymore. I can do it with, Affinity and whatever, another on one.
I think it's funny, the pre-roll on almost all of my videos always ends up being Adobe, Adobe Cloud or Adobe something, some type of Adobe.
Yeah, Adobe stock
Adobe
up
stock or something. I just think it's funny. They're just smart. They're just simply smart. They have the money to do whatever they want. You know, someone said here, Office 365 is not any different, and that's exactly true. That is the case. Adobe, just because they're doing this, that does that mean that Microsoft will do that and discontinue all Office 365 to Venezuela and other countries? Is that a possibility? I would guarantee you, okay, because this executive order is now 2 months old. I guarantee you that will not be the case. I guarantee you Microsoft software will continue subscriptions in Venezuela, but we will see. You know, we'll keep watching
Yep.
it and see what ends up happening. Some people are giving comment to Capture One, Luminar, which is great. By Skylum, I believe they're doing a great job. Luminar is doing really, really well. I think they're probably one of the better photo editors out there, but they do have some issues being, let's say, not as good for the professional. It does have a little bit of quirks here and there. Right now, some people were asking. I would recommend either on one, Capture One, or possibly the Exposure. What is it? X5 now. From Alien Skin. I think they changed their name recently. But those are the ones that I would
Right.
recommend. Of course, you can go free with Darktable and Raw Therapy and whatnot, but those are fantastic also. But yeah, someone also brought up Open Office. So that is an Office package that is free. And it does basically all the stuff that Office 365 or a lot of the stuff does, or similar there too, like the Word and the Excel and the PowerPoint and the Access. That's very, very similar, and it's free. And I believe that Open Office will also read in your Microsoft files, which is awesome. That is really great. So someone brought that up in the chat too, and that is a great option for a lot of people. So I mean, for me, I look at this and yes, this whole Life After Adobe series I put together, I put it together because I wanted to help out as many people as possible. And like you said, a lot of people don't understand what's going on. Okay. And they don't see
Right.
it. They don't know it and they don't see it. Whereas you don't have to be a professional to kind of get into this, get involved and say, you know what, this is not something for me. Even I see a lot of kids, people that are in school, and they'll write in, they'll be like, Joe, what can I use for this? And then
Yeah.
I'll give them the alternatives. Be, yeah, I tried this or that or whatever. I can't afford the $9 a month. I can't afford the 30, I can't afford the 50 some dollars a month. Some of these students, they're in school. And the problem that I have a lot of times with a lot of the US based companies are they're so in the back pocket of these large corporations, it just pisses me off. I mean, I can't, so guys, I went to art school and I have 4 years in one school, 2 years in another school. I went to a lot of different schools. I went to school for a lot of different things. One of the schools I went to was the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. So I did graphic design. I did a lot of other things at the Art Institute, but a lot of these schools are promoting Adobe products. And if you don't have the Adobe product, you cannot take the class. All right. You can't say, oh, I want to go and edit my photo instead of in Photoshop. I want to use Affinity Photo. No, you can't. All right. They want you to use that, and that is it. So it is definitely problematic because they are bringing that to people and saying, this is what you need. And then what happens, this moves on into the workforce, guys. I worked at a lot of ad
Right.
agencies. I was doing paste up and layout. I was doing magazine work. And a lot of that work was done on Adobe software. Okay. And that was just simply it. If you didn't know the Adobe software, you wouldn't get a job. All right. And that still is
Yeah.
kind of the case today. It's a little bit less than it was years ago. You can get away with doing inter-office work, okay, from one agency to the next agency, even though the files need to be workable with both, but you can use, for example, one of the Affinity files and then export it in a PDF or export it in a different format that it can be worked on in an Adobe file, in an Adobe system. So yes, we're able to do that. But years ago, you weren't able to do that and you were stuck with Adobe, which is just a crying
Sure.
shame. So Luckily, it's starting to get a little bit better, guys, a little bit better. And like I said, if you haven't watched any of those videos in that playlist, go check them out because I did a lot of them of that life after Adobe, cutting the cord. Check out all the ones that I went through. It's not a definitive list, but it is a list of things that you can check. And I've always said, and I'm going to continue to say, don't listen to what I tell you to use. All right. Check them all out, get the trials, check them out for yourself, and then decide what works the best for you. Perfect example is I used a lot of Lightroom alternatives. One of the ones, like I said, was Luminar. The reason I couldn't go with Luminar because it wouldn't allow me to bake in copyright and, like, for example, having a watermark going across the entire image saying proof, let's say. I need that in my
Right.
work. So when I'm exporting 500 images, I need a watermark at the bottom. They do not allow me to do it as of yet. I cannot use them. But for you that doesn't need that functionality, Luminar might be great. And you wouldn't need On One or Capture One or Export X5 or whatever. So definitely look at all of the different alternatives yourselves, and don't listen to me or anyone else you find on YouTube as saying this is the definitive, de facto, the only way to go, because it is definitely not the case.
No, that's true. And Brent Gilbert, he said in the chat about the educational side of the Adobe software. And he's absolutely right. I mean, Adobe has great licensing for educational institutions.
Right.
So, as a teacher, as a school system, as a student, you can get a significant discount on the product. So, years back, Adobe was the only player in town and they knew it. And they still ran great educational pricing to get people, to get school districts, college level, university on board with their product. So that way they learned on that product, they graduated school knowing that product, and then they just started using that product in the workplace. And, that became the de facto standard. That's why. And when I was talking to that teacher about the Adobe product, they're still stuck back on CS6 because they can't afford in the budget to roll into Creative Cloud because that is the only option now. You can't buy. So, they're staying at that level, but that also means it's going to inhibit the upgrade of their operating systems, of their computers. So now what's going to happen is the students are going to be falling behind the curve on the software rather than being on the forefront. And for instance, my daughter is taking a CAD class in high school. They're using this CAD software from 2010, and it's like a crappy software and it's very antiquated. It doesn't do what she's trying to make it do. And I said to her, I'm like, well, why haven't they upgraded to newer software?
Right.
There's plenty of other CAD programs out there that are free. But now free isn't for everyone because now you have the IT to support all these computer systems. And as soon as you start installing free software that's not backed, let's say, by a company that's going to be supporting it, like Adobe, when there's a problem, it's a problem across the board that these people need to contend with. So they want to stay with the tried and true, the thing that they know is working for them. And if it ain't broke, they're not going to fix it.
No, absolutely. I have to say, I have to give a shout out here to Charles Williamson Jr. He is a disabled U.S. Navy retiree. He has a small business, and he appreciates those alternatives I put out there. He said alternatives have saved me money and headache. As a retiree, veteran student, I get discounts, which is important. Just like you were saying, he gets discounts, but still don't want to use them. He also says that Adobe feels the pressure. They created XD basically as a way to rip off Sketch, and this is the case. Once again, thank you for your service. But that is the case. I do believe that Adobe is feeling the pressure. Remember, guys, though, Adobe does not make the majority of their money from any of this that we're talking about. They have a separate company on the side that does analytics. That's basically big data company that is where they make a ton of their money. So when you take a look at their numbers are still going up because that big data company that they have, that they own, is doing very, very well. So that though
Right.
being said, I do feel that us voting with our wallets and saying, you know what, my membership's up. See ya. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I don't want, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm out. It was funny when I did this and I cut the cord. I remember getting on the phone and saying, hey, I want to cut the cord. I want to get rid of you guys. And that was it. And they immediately gave me all sorts of things. Oh, wait a second, Mr. Christina. Wait a second. Um, we don't want you to leave just yet. We're going to give you 90 days free. And at that time, I have the full blown 50 some dollars a month. We're going to give you 3 months free. Okay. 3 months free. And then you decide after 3 months if you want to get rid of us or not. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do it, guys. I'm saying that I'm cutting
No.
the cord. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I cut the cord, and that was the end of it. That was the end. But this is what they do. They don't want to see you leave, even though we think that they're, this
Yeah.
big company. They do care. And like I said, we vote with our wallet. When we say that's the end, that is the end. Also, the important thing here is by not giving that money to Adobe and giving it to companies like Affinity and all the rest of them that are out there that are currently making alternatives, allows us to not only have better software, but it gives us options. Okay. It takes from
Yeah.
Adobe, but
Yeah.
it infuses these companies that need to be infused to be able to continue to innovate. Once again, innovation. Where Adobe has been stifled, a lot of these companies have not. So that is really, really, to me, very, very valuable to be able to get that money infused into these other companies, these alternative companies.
Yeah, sure. No, and what it does too with the other players, it starts to do what the web did. It starts to level the playing field for businesses. The more competition that's out there for Adobe, the more alternatives that there are available that are quality, the more diverse the user base can be. They can
Right.
choose to use Adobe or they cannot. They can use Affinity, they could use whatever. And it helps to bring the monopoly down. It helps to level the playing field. In the early days of the internet, the small startup guy had no chance against the big established companies in the same field.
Right.
There was no way they didn't have the budget to promote their product or service in the same level that the big boys did. But when the internet came out, the little guy could have a website that was every bit as good as the big company, and now they were more on equal playing field.
Right.
And today, even still, I mean, the web is a great equalizer. It allows somebody who is literally working out of the bedroom in their home to create a business and get online, and through some hard work and dedication can be very successful at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, Bob in Oregon, he writes Adobe and Apple pretty much follow the same path with schools and teachers. And that is absolutely the
Absolutely.
case. We saw Apple, be in every school everywhere and being a creative and going to creative school besides an actual 4 year college. Being in that creative school, I saw that a lot of those computers were Apples. That was just it. Why?
Yeah.
Because Apple just got their grips onto the schools and just pumped them with a ton of computers. And as these creatives left the industry or left the school and went into the industry, they moved into Apple also. Now, I personally went away from Apple. I cut the cord from Apple about 3 years ago, and I built a PC. Now, is that for everyone? No. But the reason I did it, guys, the reason I did it is kind of similar to what's going on with Adobe. It's the lack of innovation. We get Apple did the exact same computer for professionals like us year after year after year. All right. And then
Yep.
finally they developed like a coffee grinder, which I thought was garbage. Okay, there was no
Yeah.
upgradability to it. There was nothing you can do with it. It was just stupid. All right. For a professional, it's a stupid model. And then what they would do is they would stick in a year, 2 year, 3 year old technology and then tell you how great it is. They finally stuck in, I think it was USB 3.0 into one of their machines like 5 years after it was out there, or 4 years after it was out there. And then they made it into like this next best thing since sliced bread. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
what happens. And a lot of people, they're not aware of it. They don't see it. We buy these Apple computers that literally have, processors that are 2 or 3 year old in speed. And we do it
Yep.
because they have a really great form factor. Okay. They have a really great UI, and UI is a really big thing. And that's one of the reasons a lot of you guys have said, listen, I use Linux now. All right. And I think that's great. But the problem is the UI. A lot of people don't go into Linux because, even though it's free, is because there's not a lot of software or enough software for people to be able to use for business. All right. So that is
Right.
an issue. It is definitely an issue. But I have to agree with Bob over there in Oregon. Definitely. Apple, Adobe, you know, the same body, two heads on the same body.
Yeah, back in the day, that's what it was. And Ben Design says the same thing is happening with Chromebooks right now in the education, and that's absolutely right. I mean, my kids, they can get so many Chromebooks for an entire class to have their own Chromebook, as opposed, for like way less money than what it would cost to outfit a room with PCs. So the kids are, yes, they're growing up with these laptops, lightweight things, these educational, rugged Chromebooks, and they're using Google products. And that's what they're getting to know. Now, from a parent standpoint, I really like it. I mean, it makes it easy for them to get online at school, to use Google Docs for their word processing, to use Sheets for their calculations, to use slides for their keynote or their PowerPoint presentations.
Right.
I mean, I like it because they can do it at school. They can come home, log in. It's very easy. It's very smooth. But when they get out of school, they're going to need to use a regular computer. They're
Absolutely.
going to,
Absolutely.
so much today is web based. So, if you're using a browser on a Mac or a PC, or you're using the Chrome browser, they're all very similar. No big deal. But, they're going to be, again, depending on how space changes, if they will go out and get a job, they're going to want them using Office,
Absolutely.
not so much Google. Now, modern business, a lot of small startups and stuff like that, we're all using cloud. We're all using Chrome and all this stuff,
Right.
because it's cheap, it's free, it's easy. You could share it with people. The barrier to entry is so low, that it's just easy. But big business is still using Microsoft. They're not using Chrome.
No, that is true. That is absolutely the case. I mean, for me, I was looking here. Jim Graves says Adobe has long been seen as an industry standard for creative arts, and it's absolutely the case. Now there are several alternatives that are every bit as capable. We have more choice, and I choose Affinity. Now that is absolutely 110% the case,
Yep.
Jim. Absolutely, we
Yep.
do have alternatives now. And that is really what is so important. It goes back to the idea of, putting all your eggs in one basket, putting everything into Adobe's basket, and then not knowing what's going to happen. All right. I do not like the
Right.
idea of
Right.
being beholden to any one entity for my work, for my creativity, for housing my work, for anything when it comes to that. It's really problematic. And there's just too many out there, too many people that have relied on a specific company, and then that company either goes belly up or something happens, and it's gone. This has been happening for quite some time, especially when it comes to cloud-based businesses. Like I said, a lot of Google stuff has gone the way of the dodo bird. And people have used it for many, many years, and then all of a sudden
Yep.
it's just gone. And they put hours and hours and hours into making it, and it's gone. Same thing with like Instagram. A lot of people are making a ton of money on Instagram. Okay. It's a really,
Yep.
really lucrative business. But how about if they wanted to shut it down at any given time? Perfect example is with Facebook. A lot of people spend a lot of time and money trying to monetize Facebook, and it's turned into just a crap show over there. It's just a hot mess. If you
Yeah.
try doing advertising on Facebook, you might as well just forget it. I mean, it's very, very difficult to get any ROI, return on investment. It's just not it's just simply not there.
Yeah, so much of the online is very difficult today because it's always changing. There are people out there, in SEO and stuff like that, whose job it is 100% of the day to figure out how to game the system to get rankings for their client. And that is a space that I don't play in, because of this moving target. The same with, you know, Facebook and advertising on Facebook. Um, so somebody's saying that
Yeah.
my mic is not working.
Oh, your
Is
mic's
my,
not coming through? I can
I don't
I
know.
can maybe we'll give it a second. Let me just see if my mic's coming through. Ben Design, he says some people get really worked up about this excuse me, and shame others in saying that they can't be a professional if they don't
Yeah,
use Adobe. That is so 110% the case. The whole idea of
yeah,
shaming people that aren't using Adobe. How many times you hear people, God, for years, you're not using Adobe Photoshop? What are you doing? What are you doing? You can't be a professional and not use Adobe. Okay, that whole idea of shaming people into using a specific brand is so true, absolutely true. And he says, I think it's because they've sunk so much of they sunk the cost into Adobe. They've sunk their money basically into Adobe, and they're like trying to justify. And that is the case. That justification. That
yeah.
is
Well,
absolutely
that's the case with
100% the
everything.
case.
Yeah, that's the way it is with everything, right? With
Yeah.
computers, with cameras, with everything. We become fanboys of a particular company because we've invested so much, not
Right.
only just dollars, but time and energy and everything else.
No,
So,
absolutely.
we want to feel that we made the right decision.
Yeah, I have to say that is absolutely the case when it comes to sinking a lot of money into things. And you were talking about cameras. That is so true. How many channels you see out there that will tell you exactly what camera to buy? All right, or what flash to buy, or whatever the case might be. And it not necessarily is because it's the best or the best for you. It's because it's the best for their pocket and they're getting an affiliate, kickback. I'm not naming any names, but there are a lot of photography
Right.
channels out there that are just getting paid. And that's one of the things that I made perfectly clear with this channel is I'm going to be as unbiased as possible. I'm going to tell you that I'm a Canon shooter for the last 20 years, but I don't hold any flag for Canon at all. And if another company has a camera that I think is better, which they do, I will state it always. So I hope people
Yeah.
that have appreciate that. And then that's one of the things I've found that is very, very important. When I started doing this way back when we, kind of not did the Digital Photography Cafe, and I went on my own doing this channel, the JCristina photography channel, and I really wanted to make sure that people could say, you know what, when I go and look at this guy's stuff, I know it's going to be unbiased, and whatever he says is going to be whatever he feels, and that's it. And that's why I always say, do your own due diligence. All right, check out the stuff. Don't believe in what I say. And that's one of the things with this. I made sure, I said, you know what? Make sure you guys go read this EO, this executive order, so that when we have this discussion, we can educatedly talk about it. That doesn't mean that we're attorneys. That's just what we're seeing here and saying, you know what? This is just not playing very well. I don't like the way this is going on. And this is why,
Yeah.
very
Yep.
important. Let me see what else
Yeah.
is here in these
Lumbo.
comments.
Yeah, Lumbo21 said, even with YouTube, creators are running the risk of the platform changing rules for monetization. We've
Absolutely.
already seen it over the last couple of years, and that's absolutely true.
100%.
There are, a lot of these online gamer guys, right? Dan TDM, right? He was a big Minecraft guy and millions of followers and stuff, and making just tons and tons of money. And then all of a sudden, YouTube changes the rules for monetization, and his monthly income is cut drastically. So that, when you get involved with YouTube, and I know Joe and I have talked about this very extensively offline, when you get involved with YouTube, you have to be doing it for the right reason.
Right.
And trying to make a living off of YouTube ad money, in my personal opinion, is not a good idea. Because you're putting all of your income into YouTube's basket there.
Yeah, and
You know,
you don't know, like just like we always say, the TOS, the
yeah,
terms of service can change at any moment, and now all of a sudden you have nothing. And if you're staking your entire business on YouTube, that's gone. I see a lot of
yep,
people that try to push people into Vimeo. I see a lot now are trying to push them into Instagram Live feeds or send them into their channel or someplace else. Okay, Discord. One of the things that we started doing here with this channel was I made sure that I created a creative community on a Discord server off of YouTube so that I can
yep,
have a better communication with you guys. Once again, go over to that community.jcristina.com. Community.jcristina.com. I threw it in there so you can see it down there. Go there, sign up, it's free. And then we have these conversations. They're more detailed, and unlike with YouTube, where it's so difficult to be able to search for things, also to
yeah,
reply,
yeah, for
to
sure.
just have this interaction. Whereas in Discord, I took a gaming platform and turned it into a photography, videography, creative type of platform, and it just simply works. So a lot of the people that we see over there on that Discord server, they're just giving back to the community daily, all right? And it's
Yeah.
fully archived. So it's there forever in perpetuity. You can always go back and look at something. That's the type of thing that I really, really like. You have to have multiple streams or multiple sources. You can't rely on just one single thing, or if not, it's going to bite you in the ass eventually.
Yeah, they're all just channels for us to use to our benefit, of course, and not the end all and be all by any means. I mean, all of this stuff is changing every day. Um, you know, and I kind of go back, to the online space. The only thing that you kind of own is your own website.
Absolutely.
That, and honestly, that's why I'm in that business,
Right.
because building a person's website or a company's website as their central hub, is the place that they own. They can take the site from one hosting provider to the next. They can transfer the domain name from GoDaddy to One and One or whatever they want to do. They have that ability to do stuff. Their account on Facebook could get shut down anytime. Their account on
Absolutely.
Instagram could get shut down anytime. All these platforms. So being able to keep, your central hub, using the channels that are available as a way to connect with people, but ultimately driving them back to your website to connect in a different place, is really what everybody should be doing. And especially from a photography standpoint, if you're a photographer, you're looking to build a client base, having a central hub to direct people to connect with, getting them on an email list, that type of thing, collecting information, is essential to your business. I mean, so many photographers, again, they just hammering Instagram. They're putting all their time and energy into Instagram, and that's great. And you really should put a lot of time there because it's hot for photographers. But again, it goes back to, if for whatever reason your account gets shut down, everything you built is gone.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So what I just did is I just did a random selection here on someone here in the chat window, and we picked Charles R. Williamson Jr. as that person. So some of you guys didn't know, but I was doing a giveaway today. So Charles, if you get a second, go over to my website, jcristina.com/contact, and just put in your contact information and tell me what product you want. Pick any product, and I will send it out to you. So I want to ask you guys something really quick. And I want to close this off because we've been going over an hour and I don't want to go for too long. What do you guys want to see with the channel? Do you guys like this type of live thing? Do you like reviews? Do you like, what is it that you like the best about the channel? I want to hear from you guys in the comment area because I take all of this information and I build the channel based on what you guys want, not necessarily what I want. because what I want is not as important to be able to service you guys. I'm here basically as a means to service people, answer their questions, and have this interaction with you guys. So I don't want to just talk about stuff that you're not interested in. I want to talk about things that you really care about. All right. So whatever that is, please, in the comment area below this live video, put that in there. Let us know what you want to see more of, what do you want to see less of, or whatnot. And before I get out of here, I definitely want to kind of give you the floor to kind of just sign off. Let us know where they can find you, of course, Trevor. Where your properties are, as we were talking about with the website hosting, website building, and all the rest of the stuff that you do over there.
Yeah. My company is Current Media Group, and you can check out my website at currentmediagroup.net. Current Photographer, some of you may have heard this. It is a photography resource site. There's an education center with a thousand of articles and how-tos and tips that are in there. Current Photographer also kind of provides site hosting and stuff for photographers with WordPress sites. So, we appreciate anybody coming in over there and saying hello and leaving stuff. But that's really the best places to connect with me.
All right. Awesome, guys. So, anyways, as I always say, if you enjoyed this content, please throw me this big thumbs up. That thumbs up helps a lot. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button. It's very, very important. Click the bell icon that hopefully pops up somewhere right around here so that when this stuff does go live or when my videos are out there, you'll be notified immediately of them. And of course, head over to my website, JCristina.com. You'll find all those photography tools that I've invented over the years for you guys as well as myself. And if there is something over there, check it out, pick it up. I'm also going to be continuing that YouTube discount. So if you pick up anything from JCristina.com, go into that cart, use promotional code YT20. Once again, YT20, and you get 20% off the entire lot. That would be fantastic, right? That would be fantastic. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I thank Trevor for spending this time with us. And if you want to see more of Trevor or more of this live stuff, let me know. I had a lot of fun with this. It's always an issue of getting it all together working, but I think it worked out pretty good. I'll review the tapes, so to speak, when it's all done and just see how horrible or how good it was. I don't even know. But anyways, many blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here.